Is your student considering changing their major? Maybe they have figured out that whatever they're majoring in is just not the right fit for them. But maybe you're concerned about, well, what are the impacts of them deciding to do this? How will it affect their graduation time? How will it affect their financial aid and scholarships? Well, if you have those questions around changing a major and if you want specific steps on how to walk your student through this process, then you are in luck today because I'm going to cover all of that in this video and more. Now, make sure you hit subscribe because every week we are releasing a new strategy on how to pay for college without student loan debt. So that will help your student work towards avoiding any kind of loans, even if they've already taken some out for their degree. Hey there, my name is Jocelyn Pearson, founder of the Scholarship System and Debt for Degree Lab, where we redefine paying for college to help families build strong financial futures and avoid one buried in student loan debt. Now, major might not necessarily be a financial topic, but it does have a lot of financial implications. So I'm going to make sure to cover those today. But this decision to change a major might be one of the most important decisions your student ever makes when it comes to their future. They may consider changing their major for better job outlooks or financial prospects. Or maybe they've found that when they're doing the classes, they're just not enjoying it like they thought they would. Maybe instead they've found something else that they've realized they love even more. That's their true calling, that they're passionate about. Or maybe they knew all along that this major wasn't right for them, but they were pressured into it, and now they're realizing they cannot push through and they want to do something they actually enjoy. No matter what the reason is, there are so many students that actually do switch their major. It's almost like schools and committees expect this from university students. So if your student is considering it, don't feel bad. Many families get in this situation at one point or another throughout a degree. Now, comment below, is your student considering changing? And if so, what are they changing from and what are they considering changing to? We may have specific suggestions based on your student's career path or major that they're planning on pursuing. So leave a comment below and we will get back to you. Okay, so I'm going to break this down into really three main areas of how to walk your student through this. The first is, of course, in my opinion, one of the most important, and that is focusing on financial aid. For me, especially with an undergraduate degree, it is so important to avoid student loan debt as much as possible. Honestly, even if it means forsaking a name of an institution for undergraduate, money matters if your student can get through without any kind of debt. So that said, changing a major may have an impact on that. Now, if your student received a bunch of scholarships, but none are major specific, then you don't have necessarily anything to worry about there. But they may have received scholarships that were specific to their major, whether from outside sources or private sources, third-party institutions, or they may actually have received money through their department. So that would be based on their major as well. So what you want to do here is walk your student through figuring out, do these have to be paid back? Honestly, oftentimes they do not, because again, they do understand students change their major, but sometimes they do have to be paid back. For example, there are teaching grants, and if your student does not complete their teaching degree and just actually work X amount of years in that field, then they may convert to student loans. So again, you do want to make sure that you understand that, do these have to be paid back? Do the terms change if we change our major? Next is maybe the new major that they're considering can still keep them eligible. So maybe it's actually just a wash. Maybe the previous one, their old one was a requirement, but their new one matches the requirement as well. Or maybe the new major could actually open them up to additional funding. So if you're interested in finding outside scholarships on this new major, then make sure you check out our free scholarship training where I cover my 6 steps to securing scholarships quickly for paying for college. So we'll link to that in the description, or you can find the button somewhere here on the screen. But if you follow those steps, then you might be able to uncover scholarships that they weren't eligible for with their old major, but they will be with their new one. Now that's primarily focusing on private scholarships, but they may also be eligible for new scholarships for their new department if they're switching departments. Now, in terms of FAFSA, major won't typically affect their FAFSA funding. However, FAFSA is limited to 6 years or 12 semesters. So where changing a major can affect FAFSA-based money is actually if changing their major means that they will have to stay in school longer than expected. So if changing their major means that they have to stay in school beyond where the money will last, then it could mean that this could be a huge out-of-pocket expense where they couldn't even access any of that funding if it means that it extends it that long. So you want to make sure that you also understand with your student, does this mean a later graduation date? And if so, by how much? And if so, does our funding run out by then? So that is really around financial aid. The next step is to meet with advisors. So typically the first 2 years of college classes are general education classes, or gen ed as they say. And these are classes that most freshmen and sophomore take. And the nice thing about this is it gives students some leeway for transferring or for changing their majors within the university, because a lot of times they overlap regardless of the major. So this could be huge. This could mean that your student's entire first year, maybe second year, depending on when they're considering this, can still count versus just being thrown out the window and all of that money sunk. So it's important for your student to meet with an advisor and find out exactly which classes will transfer and which won't. Sometimes the ones that won't transfer can actually be counted for an elective, although that can also be a shame sometimes because maybe they had other fun classes they wanted to use for an elective. But still, if they've already taken the class, if they've already paid for the class, you want it to count if you can. Now, in Debt Free Degree Lab, where we cover strategies beyond scholarships to help get towards a debt-free degree, we have a whole lesson on the ROI, calculating the return on investment on a degree, and the importance of really figuring this out ahead of time if we can, or if we're changing a major, doing it as early as possible so that we can avoid losing those credits. Because no matter what, lost credits will always mean lost money and lost time. So we want to avoid it if we can. Now, one thing to consider is maybe your student has taken a few classes in that major and it can actually be put towards a minor. So a minor, often they only need a handful of classes in that area to get the minor. So maybe it can still count towards something, just not the main degree, but instead a minor in that subject. The other thing is if your student is changing majors, that new major may have certain requirements in order for them to enroll. For example, nursing. A lot of times students cannot actually be an official nursing major until their sophomore or junior year. They have to get through all the gen eds first. So they may need to meet certain criteria, certain under gen ed classes before they can actually transfer into that other major. Now, lastly, when speaking with the advisor, maybe the school that they're currently at doesn't have the major they want to go into, or maybe there is another university that has better qualifications for their new major. And so maybe your student has to consider transferring. If that's the case, if we can avoid that, we do, because typically transferring will result in lost credits. But if that is something that your student is looking into, I will include a link down in the description to my video about transfer scholarships. So that way your student can look into those if that is something that you guys are considering. Now, the last step might be the most important, and that is to encourage your student to do the research. When we're talking about research, we're talking about looking into potential employment opportunities. Remember what I mentioned, the ROI. What is the long-term impact of this new major? Will they have job opportunities? Will they be able to pay off any student loans that they have to take out to pay for it? Is there a positive growth in potential opportunities for this career path, or is it a dying field? Where are jobs being lost or are jobs being gained in this area? And encourage them. Can they ask for advice? Can they shadow someone in this career field? Can someone support them in this decision that is in the field so that they really can make a right decision and hopefully avoid changing their major again? The more support that you can offer them in this process, the better decision they can make. And so I know as a parent, sometimes it's hard to see them change their major and sometimes get set back when it comes to how many credit hours they have, or maybe they have to stay an extra semester, which means more money. But ultimately, a lot of times if they pursue a career that doesn't have a future, or maybe that they're not passionate about, and therefore they won't be able to have a future in it because they just won't want a job in it, that will have a much longer effect than this temporary setback of changing their major. So that's something to consider. I know, again, as a parent, you want them to be decisive and follow their path. But again, remember, I'm not going to say most, but many students do change their major when they're in college. So ultimately, the decision of changing their major, a student can do it. They're technically totally free and capable of making it changed at the university by themselves. But as a parent, if you can walk them through this process, help them make the decision, and cover these 3 different areas with them, then the chances are they're going to make a much better decision than they would if they were to just do it on a whim and quickly do it without having all of this previous knowledge that I mentioned they should try to obtain before changing the major. Again, I know sometimes it does mean some lost money, but it could mean potentially avoiding future lost money if we do change sooner than later. And lastly, don't forget that maybe changing their major actually opens up the doors to more money. So if that's the case, you absolutely want to research that so that your student can apply to any scholarships that are out there for this new major. If you're interested in where you can find those to make sure that they're legitimate and less competitive, then make sure you check out my free training in the description or go to thescholarshipsystem.com/free training. Okay. That is everything that you need to know around changing majors. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to comment below and make sure you hit subscribe because remember, every single week we're releasing a new strategy that can help your student avoid student loan debt for their degree. My name is Jocelyn Pearson, founder of the Scholarship System, and I will see you in the next video.